Hi, I'm Alexis, CEO of WeTransact, and we are back here for the panel on ecosystems of success. We have our incredible ally partners who have been so gracious with your time to show up today, join us on this exciting journey that we are launching. And I'd like to introduce you guys. You're the star of the show. So let's start alphabetical order across my screen, which is Breen. We'll start with you, Breen Sullivan, one of the co-founders of The Fourth Floor. Tell us, Breen, about The Fourth Floor and yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I know I see other members of The Fourth Floor who are here right now today. So, hopefully many of us know what The Fourth Floor is all about. But for those of you who do not, The Fourth Floor, our mission is really to level the playing field for women and also to drive systemic change. And we're doing that by first getting women onto the boards and the cap tables of women-led ventures, and by providing all companies and funds with an on-ramp to diversify their boards and their executive teams. So the main mechanism is a marketplace where people can exchange board investment related opportunities. And this is for founders, for board candidates, and women-led funds and women who are interested in investing.
Amazing. And I'm also going to share a link so everybody can connect with you easily at The Fourth Floor and all of our ecosystem partners. The Fourth Floor has been an amazing part of our journey at WeTransact. And we have had many WeTransact founders who are both a member. One thing we want to definitely showcase is you can be part of many communities. Yeah. You are not having to be part of just one. There's no exclusivity here. In fact, it's all about connecting with the right people at the right moment in time. So let's hand it off to Claire. And Claire, welcome. Tell us who you are and about the Top Knot.
Yeah, so I'm sure that this was purposeful, but our work feels so nicely connected. So I'm Claire, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Top Knot. Top Knot's mission is to move women forward, and the way that we're doing it is by making a personal development club. So we think that coaching is a really powerful mechanism to help you understand what you want and your motivation and purpose. And unfortunately, right now, it's really costly and expensive. So what we are trying to do is move that downstream, make it available to everyone who's interested. So we've been working on Top Knot for the last 2 years. We run small group peer coaching circles, other opportunities for reflection. But yeah, it's incredibly powerful work, and it is nicely connected to what I heard Breen talk about.
Absolutely.
So I think that is so cool. The fact that all these communities fit nicely, so to speak, there's an on-ramp. You could be at one moment and then come over to the fourth floor and then go over to the Top Knot. And, everybody is doing that. And that's why we're excited about today's panel, because all of us realize as founders that having a place to go is really important, and not feeling isolated. One of the reasons for this whole herd changer movement is we want to create a cooperative, supportive environment to succeed, and end founder isolation, which post-COVID is even more exaggerated and more profound than it ever has been. So these are some of the communities that have really provided that safe zone so that we could succeed. Why don't we just talk about what are things in the communities that you guys, when you created your community, what was your thinking behind the community and your approach to how you wanted to do it? Because there's so many out there that might have similar missions. I think we all share really close missions, but I think the how and how you approach it is so unique. So if you guys could share a little bit about that thought process, that'd be great.
I'll take this first. I think we actually think about community interestingly at Top Knot, because for us, community is a tool, and maybe not necessarily like the whole means to an end. And what I mean by a tool is there are questions that you can ask of yourself, like, what would be the impact of this decision? Or like, why is that important to you? that you could very much sit with on your own and journal and reflect on, but there's actually something about somebody else positioning that question and deeply listening to you, and holding you accountable and creating that space. And so like when we think about what's the role of Top Knot and the community, it is around this delineated space for learning, this step out of your life, this understanding that you're with others who are working on similar things. Maybe not topically, but that their orientation and their values for growth and learning are paramount. But, does Top Knot need to have every single person on the platform connected with every other person? No, like that necessarily is not the way that the model works. And so, I think it was a moment for us when we realized like how are we going to utilize community? And tool, I think, is potentially too broad of a word. But it's like, what's our unique take? Like, what is the purpose of having other people there? And my background is in education. And so I used to tell students all the time in the classroom, like, I do not want us doing activities in this room that you could be doing alone in your living room. Right? Like, what is the purpose of having the 25 of us in the room together? Let's maximize that. Let's talk to more people. Let's have these discussions. Let's add on to each other's thoughts. And so I think that actually informs a lot about how I think about community, both in general and at Top Knot.
That is so important. I think there are different communities who have different ways to achieve, an outcome. And really finding the one that aligns with the way you want to do it, because some people want that more one-on-one and they want something more intimate and to have like a human on the other side. And others are like, maybe they don't. They just want an app to tell them what to do and they're good with that, but there's finding that balance is really interesting. And the fact that you came from education is a really unique approach that I think gives your community a totally different feel. That's cool.
Okay, and I love everything you just said, Claire. I'm really fascinated by Top Knot. I will definitely be checking it out. Sounds really interesting and kind of like democratizing access to coaching.
Yep.
It's a little bit of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, you got it.
That's it.
Which I love, and definitely feels like a need that needs to be filled. So I think it's very cool. From the fourth floor's perspective, why did we create the fourth floor? And there's a lot of reasons. I think one really big need that we saw, there's this incredible opportunity to do something differently than all of these other organizations out there that are focused on getting women to boards. All of these other organizations, they're addressing many different parts of the challenge, but what they're not doing is essentially creating a bunch of board opportunities that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. And that there's a lot of things that are different about how we're operating and how other people are operating, but I think that gets to the crux of it. It's that we are viewing it differently. We see this, we think there needs to be a paradigm shift where we're pulling more chairs to the table and less about just taking at face value the tables that we're presented with. Because if we're all just going to sit and wait around for this small group, usually white men, to decide that they need another independent director, it's just going to take a really, really long time. And so the fourth floor doesn't want to do that. We don't want to plug and play in the existing system. We were like, well, we'll build our own. So, we see all of these women founders there, and there's just this mutual benefit and great kind of 3 birds, 1 stone opportunity, because these women founders, it's useful for them to have great support and community and tools and guidance to help them build out, maximize, and leverage their boards so that they can scale their companies, they can get funding, they can be successful. And then that creates a whole bunch of board opportunities that we can make sure women have access to. So it really solves this access issue that women have, and Pay It Forward, this new initiative that we're launching at the end of January. It's really the same thing. It's just it's the way that we will be able to really blow out the flywheel and let all companies, so whether they're big, they're private, they're public, they're male founded, which is, the vast majority, let them be able to tap into our ecosystem so that they're diversifying their boards. But it's actually the exact same thing we're doing with them, is that we're saying to corporate America, okay, why don't you pull another table up, or pull another chair up to the table. Maybe pull another table.
Let's just make more tables.
Make another table. But we're telling them to do that, and we're empowering them to do that. And so I guess that is really the difference, is that we're focusing on creating our own opportunities. And we also see just a real shift going on in the world at this moment. It is creating, I think, a massive pipeline. There's going to be really big demand for women with previous for-profit board experience. And right now it's the chicken and egg. There is no way to get for-profit board experience if the criteria is for-profit board experience.
Yeah.
So,
and it is. Yeah. It's a huge, like, everything is, if you think about it, so interconnected. And what's great about your approach and what the fourth floor is doing is looking at it holistically and coming at it from many different angles, but finding maybe that refreshing approach, like definitely bringing a new approach to it, a new way of thinking, hopefully a more inclusive way. It's exciting to hear you guys are expanding. We went through that journey where we went from She Transacts to We Transacts, and it's a celebration of saying, oh, wow, this is working. We're helping each other. Let's share this with everyone. Let's amplify and scale this up. So congratulations on that. That's super exciting. Look forward to hearing about it. And
Alexis, can I ask Breen a question?
Please jump in. We want this to be very casual.
Yeah, well, I'm fascinated. Something that I think is there's like an intersection between community and audience, right? Mm-hmm. And like sometimes the way I was hearing you describe the fourth floor, these women who are like preparing themselves for the board seats and making the opportunities are certainly the community. And it's interesting for the flywheel that you're trying to create and like the larger vision are these other companies more audience, or are they going to be participating in similar community activities? And how do you think about maintaining the integrity of what you've built with the like broader mission?
Well, thank you for asking that question. It's a great question. So that is actually really core to Pay It Forward. So the way it works is that any company out there that becomes a Pay It Forward partner, they have to nominate at least 2 women executives who qualify for membership in the fourth floor. Those women join the fourth floor to pursue their own for-profit board career, but they're the community. And of course, the Pay It Forward partner is not limited to 2. They could nominate as many as they want, but to the extent, like aside from those individual executive women, the company, yes, is sort of external in that the company is producing at least one board opportunity that we're listing in our board seat exchange. They also can post openings at, like, for executive positions, et cetera, because we also want to get women, onto those leadership teams. Right. So they post the roles, and then they will be able to search and filter and find candidates who've elected to be, like, who are interested, right? Like people who want to be contacted by a company about a board opportunity.
Yeah. What an excellent positive feedback loop.
Yes, it is. Right. It reinforces. And, that's the thing about community is how do we make it more sustainable? And that's a great example of how to make it more sustainable. Right. I think of it, if you distill down, I always like to make it like super simple, but if you took a tree from the forest, you plant 2 more, so it's like you grow, and that's important. And to hear that you guys are implementing it, this is one of the things that's very exciting about the communities and ecosystems of success. One of the key things you guys do really well is you have this Pay It Forward. You have this, it's not just a taking community, it's a giving. Right. So I'm glad that you touched on that. And Claire, with you and your community, you have such a built into the educational and the experience and the actual process. You have that giving built in because you have to participate.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we've spent the last year and a half validating is whether or not these peer coaching groups could run without a facilitator, because we knew that this would be able to expand massively if we were able to take that element away. But what that meant was that we needed to arm people with the skills in order to hold coaching focused spaces. So for us, that was deep listening, authentic acknowledgement, and powerful questions. And what's interesting is so many people who come back to us say, oh, this has actually strengthened my relationships and other aspects of my life, or, because like these skills are fundamentally strong to hold across the board. But yes, there is a certain amount of compassion and bonding that occurs in these circles. We switch them up pretty frequently. Top Knot is not about like a persistent relationship and not necessarily about friendship either, right? It is about holding space and feeling challenged, but fundamentally the unit of change is you, and other people are doing that work alongside you, which is actually a different orientation once again to, I think, how people think about community inherently. There's reciprocity in this, but it is slightly different than like we're all working together on one goal. We're all working parallel on our goals, but our like collective skills and our collective progress actually uplifts. So anyway, I could get really philosophical about learning theory.
This is what today's all about. I love showcasing what you guys are doing because you're thinking outside the box. You're thinking of ways that is like, how do we really maximize the impact? How can we, the one-to-one, of course it works, right? But it maybe doesn't provide that service for everyone. And the fact that both of you have in your communities the ability to democratize access, to really get this tool and resources in the hands of as many people as possible to create this huge change. I mean, this is how global movements and change happens, is it starts with communities like yours that are thinking, okay, it's not just the 5 people I touched last week. It's all those people, and then the exponential effect of all the people they impacted, but giving them the tools. Can you guys share some of the tools in the community, like the skill sets that you think are really valuable? Claire, you touched on them, and Breen, I know there's so many tools. Like, what are you teaching your community that they can use on their own? That where it's like, wow, I learned this from your event, or I learned this from your process, because that's the goal, is we're teaching people how to fish, not handing them the fish. So yeah, share with us a little bit about some of the tools that you think, your community is getting and learning. Skills, I guess, could also be.
Well, okay, so I can dive in and answer that first. I think one really big thing we're doing to teach our community to fish is really helping them reframe their understanding of themselves. So whether they're a founder and they maybe haven't necessarily thought of themselves as a founder, quote unquote, or someone deserving of a board or an advisory board, or that even just helping people go through that journey of reframing themselves in this broader context, realizing that they are valuable, what they have to offer, these opportunities on their boards are interesting and valuable to so many people that they wouldn't ever believe that there would be a market for that they don't know there are women lined up down the street and around the block for those opportunities. So that's on the founder side. It's very similar on the candidate side, helping them just reframe themselves of, okay, maybe I'm not a CFO of Office Depot in Spain, but I do have great core board skills and network connections and other things. And if I start identifying it now, I start thinking about it now, you control your own narrative. And if you were really, you really were motivated to figure that out and put yourself forward as a board candidate, so many people can if they see themselves that way and they reframe themselves that way. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. And you've got so many different ways that it could be implemented. That's so interesting. Claire, I know you touched on a few, but I'd love to hear more.
A commonality that I hear between both of us is like, there is a target audience who may not even know that, like, what the value is or what exists out there for them. So for us, coaching, we are targeting a crew who largely hasn't had access to coaching previously. And so, it's not even just the awareness of TopKnot, it's the awareness of what this sort of thing might do for them. And partially that's because coaching has averaged, life coaching is about $200 an hour on average, and executive coaching is about $500, which is out of the range for most people, right?
Yeah.
And so, back to education, I taught seniors for the past 11 years. And so some of them are now turning 30. And I don't think one of them has been offered personal or professional development from their employer, largely because we've relegated that to leadership. And so, for both of us, I think it is not just building the awareness of ourselves, but building the awareness of what the value or what the outcome could be. And so that's an interesting challenge. And I think also a reason why partnerships can be so helpful to open the door to opportunity, not just who we necessarily are.
Yeah. Speaking of partnerships, we've met through a variety of partnerships and initiatives. That's a huge part when you think of the community. These are some of the things that you provide, but also communities ourselves.
Yeah.
We are startups. We are founders as well. And so let's talk about, as a founder, how leveraging the communities and alliances, finding communities that are aligned, that might be really great partners. How do you identify that? I know early on that could be a really daunting thing to a founder. How do I know who is the right person to reach out to or community to reach out to?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is just sort of shed the scarcity mindset, which, it is hard to escape seeing the 2% of venture funding goes to women stat on the internet, right? It is everywhere. And yet, just because somebody else is a women's focused product, and even a women's personal growth focused product, does not necessarily mean that they're actually competition. We are not all going after scraps. This is a huge problem. And I think so frequently I'm asked, how do we differentiate versus blank person, and I'm we are all contributing to the cultural zeitgeist around allowing people to have access to personal development or professional development, or just thinking more critically about what they want and who they want to be in the world. So I think once we, it's easier said than done. And I totally understand that there's a finite number of checks, or it feels that way, but if you can truly embrace that, people who are even working on very similar problems might actually be contributing to your growth as well. I think that sheds, or at least gives me an opportunity personally to exhale. In general, I try to operate in the world such that my karma will be. So I don't really see others as competition. But also there isn't a public company focused on women's personal development yet. I think that's going to be TopKnot. But until that point, I don't actually think that competition is the thing to focus on. So everyone to me is a potential collaborator. Yeah. Unless, of course, I think this is where your foundational pillars come into place. And if people are approaching this work drastically differently than we would, then it would be compromising for us sort of as who we are in the world. But save that, everybody out there, I want to at least view the possibility of working together in the best light.
That's huge, because a lot of times we close off doors that don't need to be closed, or we're closing doors that really could be our greatest, strongest allies and support. And you really, I love that you're saying that, because naturally sometimes it is just built in, especially to the startup ecosystem, that it's a winner takes all. It is always competition. And that's what WeTransact is all about, connecting those aligned networks like yours and Fourth Floor. We have Black Girl Ventures, we have Scroobious, we also have the Guild, all of these networks that, yes, we might do similar areas, we might have similar missions, but at the end of the day, it's our approach. We do it in a more human way and a more open way and in a collaborative way. And Breen, I want to pass it over to you as well.
Alexis, I am so sorry, but actually my youngest, his after school, so this is why I've just had to turn my camera off a couple of times. His after school activity was canceled. So now the school is calling me. My husband is not here because I think he's picking up our daughter. We have no problem after school.
We got it.
So I have to go. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
It's so nice to meet you.
Family.
It is so nice to meet you too. And I, of course, have so much to say on all these topics. Thank you for letting me participate, Alexis. And I'm so sorry I have to jet.
First of many. No worries. No worries. Go take care. And, that brings us to the human element of
working women.
Exactly what this panel is all about.
Working women, busy women. Look at the challenges that we have to face.
Yes,
exactly.
With it. Right back to the mission. And I think what's really exciting, this actually I want to highlight and say thank you to Cocquet, who is one of the panelists. She has gone into, she's having a baby right now. So she's not able to join us either today, but she is here with us in spirit. I have put in a link and we'll be sharing a video with everyone so you can learn more about Anne and the Guild and what she's offering. But we are thinking of you, Anne, and so excited about the new family edition and all the blessings that are coming your way. So this is what it is to be human. And this is what it is to still get back to work right after. And, I'm happy to also take any questions from the audience. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about was, what are some techniques that you use to specifically catch yourself when you're thinking in that scarcity or competition mentality? I have a couple that I personally do that work for me, but I think it's important for us to really try to equip ourselves with ways to keep ourselves in that mentality that's going to be more about abundance.
Well, I feel like this is ultimately on brand, but I spend a lot of time with my coach and then with my co-founder, and we use a lot of the skills that we put together at Top Knot. But I think that there are words, one that my coworker who's a certified coach talks about all the time, which is I should do something. What is should, that for her is a trigger word, because it's should is some, it implies something and what's behind it. So being able to put a pause on that. But also I think it is easier to just be consistent across the board about the way in which you are viewing others in the space, as opposed to, that person's competition, but these people aren't that close to us, so they're probably okay. And yeah, I mean, honestly, sometimes I have this moment where I'm am I being too soft, right? And sort of internalizing things that I think are often put on women founders. Particularly when it comes to competition, right? Would men be having these same thoughts about others? Would they be, giving that move so much grace? It looks like they took blank, what? And I just think ultimately for me to live in more alignment, I need to focus on what I'm doing and what we're doing. Because ultimately that's what you can control, but could be more Zen than
this is real, because as founders, all of us have to figure out what feels right to us. And one thing about communities is, one of the reasons I've gravitated towards these communities, and we want to create these safe zones and connections, on ramps to be able to really access communities like yours, is we want to make sure the alignment's right? That this is a community that's going to share those values. So, when you're in the community, all right, we at least have a common language, even if we're doing completely different things, where we have an approach that philosophy that really matches who we're about. So it aligns with our values. And then number two, which I think is so important, is blinders on. I was an Olympic level athlete, and nobody on the ice as a figure skater was competition. It was all internal. And when you realize in any sport, in any discipline, in any business, and you are your greatest competition, right? It's all about bettering yourself and getting yourself to the next level, it doesn't matter what's going on. Yes, you have to look around. Yes, you can gain a lot of knowledge and insight. You have to be aware. You can't just be like, ignorance is bliss as a business person, because you need to be responsible.
Yeah.
You don't go sharing things that maybe are private secret sauce before they're patented and trademarked.
Right.
I mean, you have to be strategic, but blinders on. I mean, this is all about your mission, your goal, your journey, your path. And I think that's something that I'm really glad that I had trained into me at the Olympic training centers is blinders on.
Yeah.
And if anything, they motivate you, they push you to be better.
A very recent example, and was not an Olympic level athlete, but was a college runner. I ran a turkey trot this weekend, and there was a 5K and a 10K, and I ran the 10K version. And as we were coming back, because it was an out and back course, there were a whole bunch of people, just like families, walking the 5K that we eventually caught up to. And the last mile was uphill and things got hard. And I so uncharacteristically walked. And in thinking about what happened in the race at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I walked because I saw all these other people walk. It would never have occurred to me to walk if other people around me weren't doing the same. And so, you are influenced by what others are doing. And so, having whatever the thing that you're tethering to, for me, frequently it is athletics, and thinking about this, you are kind of running your own race. That doesn't mean that as the conditions change or whatever, you're not making adjustments. But I think whatever really well, for me, it's running. For you, it's figure skating, whatever it is. It could be cooking, it could be reading, it could be podcasting, whatever it is. There is a metaphor there to teach you and to have your internal compass. And also probably the reason that you're into it is because it has some level of community as well. And so, I always appreciate analogies or metaphors from people's lives that they truly and deeply and viscerally understand, because I think it's an important internal compass or way to tap into that.
It is. And, communities are, yes, it's not necessarily, especially as a founder, we're trying to be independent thinkers. We're trying to be innovative. We're trying to think of these new ways, right? But there is a balance between going out and having these innovations and these new ideas and really pushing the limits, and then also having a sense of community, alignment, support, because there's going to be failures along the way. And that's really where communities become very powerful, is when something's not working.
Right.
You need to go back to the drawing board. You got to figure it out. And alignment, a safe zone where you can do that and you can fail, is key. And I think that's something we want to pull out is, you don't go to a community when you, sometimes it's when you need it. Sometimes it's when you don't need it. But community is there for you.
Yeah.
At many different times of the journey. I see some new faces coming up. Thanks for joining us. I know we've got a lot of things here about community. Feel free to put in any questions that you have. One community I wanted to share, which has been very gracious and exciting for us to be a part of, is the Anthem Awards. And the Anthem Awards is celebrating purpose and mission-driven work from people, companies, and organizations worldwide. Of course, that aligns with what our values are. And they have invited everybody here to also be a part of their community. You can join the Anthem Awards group, which is a great way to network with other leaders, organizations, nonprofits, and the work that they're doing globally, so that you can really find more alignments and organizations that may help you in your journey and your cause. So we definitely want to give a shout out to them. We were honored to be nominated for the awards and as an innovation platform and connecting the dots across the ecosystem for good. So we're excited about what this represents, and it is the first all award globally, and it was the Webby winners and the Webby Awards that started the Anthem Awards. So this is kind of an exciting shift. So let's talk about this shift. What does community now mean post-COVID? We know the benefits, we have some tools, but how do you see it changing? What are the things you're anticipating, planning for, still don't know?
I feel like so many things, just not going to have the hubris to say that we know all of this. It's interesting though. So we started the company in February of 2020. And in our initial outreach to people, we asked whether or not people wanted to meet like virtually or in person. And it wasn't entirely split. And it's February 2020, but there were a fair number of people who wanted to meet in person. And I am wondering and just have like a full curiosity about whether or not there will be sort of a reversion from these virtual spaces. I think TopKnot is a system and a structure and a way of being. And so that community can persist, whether it is in person or online. But, we've built with that durability in mind. But I'm not sure. And I think that at minimum, online community has been accelerated. There are people much smarter than I am on the topic, but at least for us, there is some benefit from putting people together in these, it's not even just like relative anonymity. It's scenarios where like they would not be connected if not for TopKnot, and that their context is different than everybody else's context who's present. And that actually creates a richness that may or may not be present if everybody was congregating in the same space. So
yeah, the physical space is totally, it's a worldwide reality. And it's something that I really appreciate you sharing transparently that we don't know. And that's what's so exciting about today's summit is every panel is we're all first movers, right? We're not afraid to make these mistakes publicly. We're not afraid to share what works and doesn't work. We're all figuring it out, but the more we share, the faster we're going to figure it out, and the faster it works. So that's refreshing just to hear you be so candid about that. And I thank you because that's really important that we all hear that.
A community I know really well is school. And I think that many of us saw that trying to recreate the systems and structures that existed for an in-person setting online was challenging, right? And the more that I see these online educational platforms crop up, I'm like, oh, these were built intentionally for this use case. And so, this gets back to the purpose behind the community and the intentionality and like, what is it actually there to do? Yeah. And if you know the answers to those questions, or if you have thoughts about the answers to those questions, the best people to tell you the answers are the people in the community itself.
That's a great point. Asking the community. That is how I hear so many have really grown quickly. It's because every member was part of its evolution.
Right. Yeah. In some ways, the real challenge of community builders is to try to figure out how to listen. Mm-hmm. And listen through no one is otherwise out there, because I'm not sure that social listening, for example, is always the best way. And whoever's in your community, particularly like a challenge that we have right now is that we're trying to find somebody to run like interviews for us, because people know that TopKnot's my baby. And so they're going to say different things to me than they're going to say to other people who are more distant from the decision making. So like all of those considerations, when you think about, what is your community saying and who are they saying it to, and how are they talking about the value that the community brings to them? It's a non-trivial task to really tap in. And when you do, you have something magical.
It is something magical. And I think what's really great, and a lot of people are like, oh, why is the ecosystem of success under the category here of empathy? And what you're talking about is that it's listening, it's understanding, it's really empathizing and really connecting with others and them responding and demonstrating. So empathy is a huge part of community. And I think that's something that globally, it feels like there's a little bit of a renaissance of learning how to empathize again. Digital has created a little bit of a distance.
Yep.
And now we have this like rubber band effect where now it's like, okay, now we need to actually realize what our actions online at a distance are impacting others, and being responsible for that impact. And hearing when it's a negative impact, when it's a positive impact, when it's maybe not a good impact, like it has no response. This is an era of discovering all that. So what are some of the feedback loops that you do with your community? How do you listen? How do you get more transparent and honest feedback?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we said early was that we wanted to build with, not for. And so that has been present from the beginning, which allows us, I think, to ask people to be, to do a bit more labor, I'd say, in providing feedback, right? Like it is something that we are transparent about upfront. And we're also really quick. We're quick to react when people have thoughts, or when something's broken, or things that need to address. So, that is a benefit of small scale at the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after every meeting, we actually invite people to give anonymous feedback. And then at the end, we have a pretty intense survey process. We also have sort of an open call at any point when people want to come in. But there is a process of distilling like where messages are coming from, and so you have to sort of calibrate as to whether or not you're going to jump at this like one person suggestion or this need that one person has. So yeah, I think defining what you're looking to learn. So much of this also is just like watching how people utilize things and listening to what they say when they don't think you're listening. And then, yeah, so for some of our more, prolific community members, or just people who have been like devotees for a while, oftentimes we ask them to do some like narrative writing that we showcase on our blog. And I'm a huge believer in story as opposed to, just looking at quantitative data. And I think story can be really rich, and you can pull out things that you might otherwise not hear. So, yeah, there are people, I get jealous when I see people who have like very, very active Discord channels or whatever. We don't have that. We don't try to do Slack. I wouldn't say that like any of our social accounts are exactly like booming. But in the spaces, particularly because we have like a code of conduct and we have community pillars and how to be, like there are magic moments where when you're hearing people talk, or when they're describing TopKnot to somebody else, or what, like that you really get an essence about what the value is that they're getting. Yeah. You just, there's an irony of me talking to you for an hour about this, but like you have to listen less or talk less and listen more.
Well, and it's great because you're kind of showing that all of the spiny senses, right? Like they say we have 5 senses. There's also like 6 senses. There's all these senses. Ways that we could get the feedback, ways we can hear from people. Some of it's through talking, some of it's verbal, some of it's nonverbal. And the fact that you even put that into your process for developing the product and adding that information and looking for as much feedback data as you do is really important. I think early stage, a lot of founders can often get so tunnel vision about their idea that it's like you really have to let it evolve. But this is also a super important thing that you said. Understand the context. This is an area that I feel like, especially when you're pitching a lot as a founder, you can often get off the call with one investor and be like, oh my God, we have to change our whole thing. This one, critique, or you have to know when you got to stay true to your values, right? Your mission and how you want to do it. And what is that one data point? Have you talked to 100 people? Have you talked to 1,000? Because if you just happen to talk to the one person who's the only person with that opinion, you don't want to redo your entire product off of that. That would be quite dangerous. So it's always good to know that like with community, there's feedback, but there's also you setting those clear mission, like, hey, these are our standards. This is what we accept. This is what we don't accept. Because sometimes in communities, this is the part a lot of communities don't talk about. Not everybody's a good fit for a community, and alignment's really important.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like someone's really unhappy or it's not a good fit, you can't change who your community is,
right.
who everybody is, why they're there for that one individual. That's not genuine. It's not authentic. It's not also being true to your values. So have you had, or how have you handled situations where maybe, okay, it's not in alignment anymore, because that happens in the community. And it's the hardest thing, I think, as a founder and as a leader of a community, is when something is just, okay, they're veering off. They're just not, this isn't something that's going to be beneficial to them at this moment in time, is kind of what I tell myself. I always say there's an open door. So maybe later it'll be a good fit, but just right now, how do you handle that because it's not all positive good. The reality is it's often challenging.
Yeah. So I think the way that we see this on an individual level is people who are coming with sort of a hair on fire issue and are really actually just looking for advice, and sort of get frustrated with the ethos of how the community works. Because it is like our belief is that you are fundamentally whole and that the answers are within, and we are here to support you pulling those new understandings out. But advice has very little place. And I think, on the individual level, when it doesn't work, it's often because there's like a little bit more instant gratification that somebody just wants advice. Like they want to know somebody who's been there and have them tell, which is a fine and total, like
valid,
totally legit way of solving problems. It's just very different than what we offer. And there's not a lot of space for that. And so, this is an expectations meets reality question for us. And, we do better when we are able to fully share that, like, this is a journey. Might not have a lightning bolt moment in the first month, maybe not even in 6 months, but we promise that you're making progress and we're going to help you try to visualize it.
That's huge.
I actually think the place where I've been able to calibrate a bit more is actually in strategic partnerships.
Okay.
And try to understand what the organization is looking for, and whether or not people within that org are actually going to be served by this particular offering or this particular partnership. And so despite that you're leaving money on the table, there are often times where I know that what the org is looking for is far beyond what we actually have the capacity to serve right now, or isn't exactly in alignment with what we're offering, just given that this work, we kind of believe you come to it when you're ready for it. And so having somebody sign you up for it is an interesting
force
for us to navigate. So I don't love saying no, particularly when
no for now. That's that's to me the time part, right? Like, because when you grow or capacity, or maybe then it's a yes.
Right. That's totally fair. But I do, I think it's important to understand what people get out of the community and whether or not the shifts that you would have to do in order to create something for essentially a community that already exists is within the scope of the work that you want to be doing.
Yeah. That's so interesting and important too, because there's a responsibility on both sides being in a community. There's expectations of the members, there's expectations of the people leading the community. And, you can always distill down some really good things that you're talking about, which is that under promise, over deliver. So say no to things that you can't execute and deliver, that you just know are not going to be representing you and where you're at right now. Because these are long-term relationships. I think communities are, if you think about a community, I like to think of it as a long-term relationship. And you mentioned that earlier, some people want that instant gratification. And maybe there's other environments, platforms, social media, where you could get that instant double tap or swipe right.
And so, this goes back to knowing who you are and knowing why you're doing the work and knowing why people are coming to you. And it is, I think often see these communities that have 10,000 members or 50,000 members or what, and there's an impressiveness to the sheer like volume and size. But I also think that there's total value at the beginning to shedding size in favor of having like a real pulse and a heartbeat, and not like a scatter shot, like, you know, these people are here for that, because there is a time and a place where all of those things will be in unison, because the community will be like the surrounding structure will be like bigger than the sum of the parts will be bigger than the whole. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But like at the beginning, you kind of have to get a really strong pulse. And sometimes that means that like it needs to be a smaller group so that everybody is beating together as one.
I think that's huge, because you also discover and you refine and you really make sure that as we say, if you're banking, I'm just coming up with a lot of analogies.
Here we go. It's like
here, but it's like, you know, there's going to be a very different sourdough bread depending on your starter. That starter is very important. You know, it is though. That's the heartbeat. That's the soul. That's what's going to, you know, develop into this beautiful community or not. And you have to be really careful about what, and I think that's really similar to one of the things that we feel at WeTransact is that if you put these values into the seeds of a company, you put these values into the seeds of a founder, then whatever path they decide to go on and whatever direction they go, it's going to come out of this, you know, wonderful place of her. And that's like, you know, approaching it with humanity, empathy, responsibility, the cooperative. And that's why we love that you have a process and wanted to feature what you guys are doing. And we have other communities that were not able to join us, of course, but that we want you to check out. Scroobious is an amazing community focused specifically on the pitching part of the process. So when you're fundraising, and does it in a very humane way. So we're going to be sharing with you a video that she has provided for us because she wasn't able to attend today, and also Black Girl Ventures. A lot of the work that Black Girl Ventures is doing is obviously for a very important demographic, but a community that is helping female entrepreneurs in the Black and Brown community to from idea all the way to IPO. I mean, they really are there through every step of the way and can really understand and provide a safe zone for their founders. So we want to feature as many different communities to show lots of different flavors. We'd love if there's a community that you're a part of that has provided you the unique support that you've needed as an individual, whatever that might be, share it with us. Our goal is to connect the dots across the ecosystem and build this super highway. As long as that community has the her values, which we hope as human beings we have, but it's not always the case. That's what we want to connect. We want to amplify and help all of us succeed together. Claire, you know, speaking of like the first partnerships that you did, what were your like most exciting first partnerships that you could share with us?
I'm going to keep the org names, but it's the most exciting partnerships, I would say, were organizations who were looking to extend the community beyond the programming that they had available and had trust that community could sort of like self-organize and take these things on to the next level. We added the logistics and you know, some programming and made that work possible. But I think, you know, people capture magic in a bottle, but they have like a 3-month thing. And having people then come on to TopKnot in the same way that I think some people leave Slack channels open or whatever, like it's just a different, more intentional way to have people connect. I would also say, you know, we are very focused on supporting the consumer. And so I think some of our early partnerships candidly like didn't work. Because of the orientation to this work, it's for the individual, like they need to show up authentically and vulnerably. And I've sort of hinted at, if somebody else is mediating that purchase or mediating that decision for you, it might not actually be the moment at which you want to be doing it. it's like a little bit like sending your kid to summer camp, I guess, when they actually want to be at home playing softball with the kids on the street, right? And like,
yeah,
I think if we hadn't taken those chances, we wouldn't have necessarily recognized that. So, like a strategic partnership doesn't have to be a, knock it out of the park success for you to learn a ton. And for us, it has solidified a path where we are really interested in working with individuals who are ready and excited and feel stuck and want to get unstuck, right? Like that is our core person.
Yeah.
And that might not be the thing that you want your employer to pay for. And your employer might not want to pay for that either. So anyway.
Finding a win-win is so key. And you really do. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's as important to find out who is not your customer.
Right.
as it is who is your customer.
Right.
And I think that is just know it's a blessing when it happens. Don't feel discouraged. Don't feel frustrated. Also, maybe a good suggestion to start small. Try with like an event, get to know them over time. It's kind of like, don't just hop right in full partnership where you need a contract between you. Try something on the marketing level, see, what synergies, track things. There's so many ways to be in friend zone and not have to jump right into like full-fledged committed dating with a strategic partner.
So we're officially declaring this metaphor day, and we've thrown so many out.
Watch, it'll just throw more confusion. Some people will be like, what are they talking about? Well, we really appreciate you taking so much time today. And I know it really was an incredible dive into you at TopKnot. And Claire, I mean, you're always so impressive with being so open. It's so refreshing. And for being a leader to really be in the ecosystem and be able to speak this candidly and openly about successes, failures, provide any value that might resonate with other people. This is why we asked you right away to join us today for this hour in this panel, because we need people to see it in action. This is what it's like, and let's make this the norm.
Well, thank you for providing the platform. And I think we do each other a disservice if we're holding back, right? And so I'm always excited to put real truths out there and hope that people are able to extrapolate their own learnings and move forward however it most makes sense.
That's right. Stay true to your values. I think we're pulling out the key things as stay true to what you're doing, blinders on, but don't be totally ignoring the world. Know how you're impacting others, and just keep going. Your platform is really helping so many people. We're really grateful for the service that you're offering, and would love to. Of course, they can go to your website if you'd like to share. We have it in the link as well that we provided for you, but definitely check it out if it resonates with you.
Yep.
You?
Yep, it's called TopKnot, so topknot.app, and we'd love to have you and help you pursue whatever matters most.
I love it. It's an open door when it feels right, and I'm so glad that we're able to share this with everybody as a resource. Hopefully some of the nuggets from today's talk here about communities is going to help you in your journey, your path, and your world-changing company and mission. We are here to make sure that this helps each other. So thank you for taking the time with us, and we will definitely be sharing the recording so you can watch it anytime you are available or just can't sleep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. Wonderful to see you. And we're going to go on pause before our next group. Stop recording.